Today for our artwork, we will need a variety of materials. So the first thing that we're going to need is some watercolor paints, or you can use the pan ones, or I've got some of these as well. These are liquid watercolor paints. So there's a light green, a sap green, and a viridian. The colours that I'll probably use on the pan ones are this kind of khaki green, and I'm going to use a little bit of this. It's kind of a blacky browny colour. It's not quite black. Black tends to make things a bit too dark, so we're using this colour. We also need a paint palette, which I've already started mixing some of the colours up on, playing with the colours. If you don't have one of these, you can actually use just a plastic lid or an old plastic or melamine plate or a porcelain plate, but make sure you wash the paint off as soon as you've finished with it, and it's probably better if it's an old one. You also need a couple of jars of water, clean water, and along with that you need a smaller paintbrush for lines and a larger paintbrush to paint the paper with water and then to use the watercolours. Now we need an eraser and a pencil. Probably a light pencil is good, or just draw lightly. Of course we need a piece of watercolour paper. I'm using a large A3 one, and we just need a little bit of paper towel or something like that to pat up, just in case we get any large puddles of watercolour. So we also need a leaf. Now this is a plastic leaf. I really wish I did have a monstera plant, but I don't. You can use a real plant if you've got a really lovely, interesting leaf, or you can just draw this one and use, at the end of the video, I will take a photo of this leaf, and you can just pause the video and just draw from that. What we're going to look at today is how light reflects on objects. Now, in our brains, we know that this leaf is all the same colour green, but when light reflects on that, it really changes the colour of the object, and it almost looks like there's white bits here. So when we're using watercolour, what we actually need to do is use less of the watercolour paint to create these white parts here. And you can also just use more, which basically means we're using more water and less of the colour. There are two ways that you can do the leaf. You can trace it if you actually have one, and just carefully go around the outside, or you can just use your powers of observation and just look at what the leaf looks like and draw the shape yourself. So what I'm going to do is, I'm not going to do the forgive that little shadowy bit there. I might have to move it back a bit. Let's pull this back, I think, to create less shadow. Hopefully that's not so shadowy now. Okay, so I am just going to roughly trace a shape. Now in a moment I'm going to rub out those lines. All right, I know that the line down the middle kind of goes from there to there. Now if I have a good look at this leaf, I can see that there's some parts that are missing. So I'm going to create the leaf part first, and I'm just going to come in and around, in and around. Just keep on doing that until I've created a nice shape that I like, and then I'll just do that on the other side. And they don't have to be exactly the same on the other side, so you can create different shapes. Now what I'm going to do is just extend this through a bit more. And maybe make that a little bit pointier. Extend that through. Now this is if you're hand drawing it. And I will trace another one. Now there are a few circles there, which I'll just add a couple of circles. Maybe some of those I'll draw down a bit deeper. Okay, what I'm going to do with the part that I don't need, I'll just rub those bits out. So then we've created some lovely curves, lovely curvy leaves. That's still a bit shaded there. I hope you can see that properly. And there we have the outline. That didn't rub out too well. Just make sure you rub that part out nicely when you're doing it. All right, and there we have it. There is our leaf shape. Now we get the paints ready. Okay, now if we look at leaves, or this leaf in particular, we can see that they've got the veins going through the leaf part. So what we're going to do now is on our piece of paper, just draw some of those, I'll turn that around, just draw some of those veins going through. Hopefully you can see that. We just continue that all the way through, a couple up there. And there we have our leaf drawn. And now it's ready for painting. Okay, so what I have done on the palette here is added a few different greens. I've added Viridian green, light green, and sap green from these watercolors. And then with the pans, I added some of this green here. It's kind of like a khaki green. And I added a little bit of this browny grey colour, mixed it together to create this colour here. It's a bit tricky to see, but you'll see it when you paint it. Now, as with most of our other paint or watercolour paintings that we've done, we are going to paint over it in some water. Now, I'm not quite sure whether we should paint the whole lot, because I think it possibly may dry too quickly. So we'll just kind of work in sections, I think is the best way to go. So I'm just painting kind of down towards there, making sure I miss that little circle. Try and keep within the lines as best that I can. It's not overly important. Now we paint the watercolour paper with water just so the paint moves more freely. It becomes quite unpredictable, and sometimes that's when some of the most beautiful artworks happen, when the paint just dances all over your watercolour paper and it creates all these lovely different textures, creates movement, lots of different colours mixed together to create magic. Well, that's what I think anyway. Watercolour is a wonderful medium to use. It's a great one to start off with too. I've got a little bit of mess on that, but that doesn't matter too much. All right, now I'm going to keep referring to my little, I say little, but it's a huge plant. And remembering that where we put lots of paint, that's where that's where it goes darker, and where we put more water, that's where it's going to be lighter. So that kind of makes sense. All right, I think I'm even going to just mix some of these colours all together. And then what I'm going to do, I have to move this away, sorry, is outline around the outside of that. Did you see that? Hopefully you did. All those different colours moving around. Might add a bit more of this colour. That's a nice colour. I'll make that a bit darker, I think. Where those lines are, I might just paint a bit darker in and then add a bit more water to create some lighter parts. And that's how I just might leave it, just like that. Go around it a little bit better. I might don't know what colour that's going to do. Oh, that's rather similar to the other one. So I might just go along those dark lines. Now you don't have to do that. You can actually add a little bit of highlighting a little bit later on if you like, but you don't have to. So I'm almost finished that part. I'm just mixing colours together, and that's exactly what you can do. You can mix colours together. There's no there's not really rules when you're playing with watercolour, though I don't like that green bit that's happening there. I think I prefer these deeper colours, so I'll just paint over that a little bit. You can see that's jumped over there, but that's not too much of a worry. I'll leave some light on the outside there so I don't add too much pigment, or I don't add too much paint around there. I want to keep this central line a bit dark and kind of have some light spots all over the rest of the leaf. So we're just about up to where I've already painted or dampened the watercolour with the water, painted with water. See how that just creates a whole heap of different shades of the one colour. So I've got lots of dark down there. I might add a bit more dark down there. Paint a little bit over that to get over the line so we don't see it so much. But sometimes, you know, seeing a bit of the actual pencil mark kind of helps define your picture as well. So it's not, you know, you might have a preference. You might like to see your pencil mark, and you might to have your pencil mark disappear. Just add a little bit of darkness around that hole. Now remember, if you need to pad up a little bit of watercolour, tissue is not the best, and nor is toilet paper, but paper towel is the best. So it's a little bit wet there, so I've done a little bit too much along there. So I'll just pad up a little bit, the same as this section just here. It's a little bit too much water for my liking. And another way that we can create some light patches is just pat the, we've actually done that before. So there we have it. I'll do a little bit of a zoom in. So what we're going to do is just continue painting like that, and I will speed up the process to show you. Now I'm just working on this. I've added a bit too much darkness and taken some of the paint away by patting it with some tissue paper. Just keep working at it. Now, by no means is this perfect. This is actually the first time I've ever drawn one of these leaves or ever done this sort of thing. And that's what I'm not about. I'm about trying to encourage people just to give things a go, to have a go at doing things, to have a go at painting and being creative, learning that it just doesn't have to be perfect. It's all about experimenting and having fun and giving things a go, and you know, watching yourself learning different ways of painting and creating. So I hope you've liked what you've seen today. I hope you've enjoyed watching. If you have liked it or you've learnt a little bit from it, please like and subscribe. See you next time.